Hello students, I have already published some videos on the chapter digestion and absorption. And today also I am publishing some of the topics of this chapter which are in your syllabus. So the parts of digestive system, all the parts I have not discussed, so I am discussing here. In the digestive system, there are following parts and the glands. So first of all, the alimentary canal. The alimentary canal begins with an anterior opening, that is the mouth. Then mouth opens out posteriorly through the anus, and the mouth leads to buccal cavity or oral cavity. Then the oral cavity has teeth and muscular tongue. Each tooth is embedded in a socket of jawbone. This type of attachment is called as thecodont. Means when the tooth is embedded into the jawbone, into the socket, then this type of arrangement of tooth is called as thecodont. So this is the arrangement of different types of teeth in the jaws on one side, and the sockets on the other side are shown here. So there will be, first one is the incisor. This is one in each half part of the jaw. Then there will be canines, then premolars. Number one is the incisor. Number two is also the incisor. So there will be two incisors in half part of the jaws, in each jaw. So two incisors, one canine, two premolars, and three molars. Like this: 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Total 8 in half jaw, means total 16 in one jaw. And these teeth are embedded into the sockets here, which are in the cavities into the jawbone. So this type of arrangement of teeth is called as thecodont. Then majority of mammals, including human beings, form two sets of teeth during their life. One is the set of temporary milk teeth or deciduous teeth, and this teeth is replaced by a set of permanent or adult teeth. So because there are two set of teeth in the life cycle of the human beings, this type of dentition is called as diphyodont. Then an adult human has 32 permanent teeth, which are of four types, and so this type of dentition is called as heterodont dentition. So these different types of teeth are incisors, canine, premolars, and molars, and their dental formula is written in this way. So this is one half jaw, this is another half jaw, this is upper jaw, and this is lower jaw. So arrangement of teeth in each half of the upper and lower jaw in order ICPM is incisor, canine, premolar, and molar. M is represented by a dental formula. ICPM and M is represented by a dental formula, which in human is 2123 upon 2123, means half of the upper jaw, half of the lower jaw. Then the hard chewing of the teeth is made up of enamel. Helps in the mastication of food, means crushing, grinding, chewing of the food. Then the tongue is a freely movable muscular organ, and it is attached to the floor of the oral cavity by the membrane called frenulum, ligament called frenulum. Then the upper surface of the tongue has small projections called papillae, some of which bears taste buds. Means if we touch our tongue, it is not smooth, it is having bumps on it. So these small bumps or projections are called as papillae, and some of these papillae they bear taste buds. Then the oral cavity leads into a short pharynx which serves as a common passage for food and air. Then esophagus and the trachea opens into the pharynx. Means the pharynx is opening into esophagus and trachea. Then a cartilaginous flap called epiglottis prevents the entry of food into the glottis, and glottis is what? Opening of windpipe during swallowing. Then the esophagus is a thin long tube which extends posteriorly, passing through the neck, thorax and diaphragm, and leads to a J-shaped bag-like structure called stomach. Then a gastroesophageal sphincter, that is called a muscular sphincter, regulates the opening of esophagus into a stomach. So all these structure which we have just now seen, we will be observing in this diagram. So this is the oral cavity, and this is the mouth, and the mouth is leading into the oral cavity. Then oral cavity is leading into the pharynx. In the pharynx we can see this is the opening of lungs or the windpipe, and this is the opening of esophagus. So in the pharynx both are opening, or we can say pharynx opens into windpipe and esophagus. Then esophagus crosses the neck, thorax and the diaphragm and reaches into the abdomen area and opens into the stomach here. So this opening of esophagus into stomach is guarded by esophageal sphincter. This keeps the opening of esophagus closed, and only when the food is swallowed, then only this opening is open and the food enters into the stomach. Then stomach is having the parts like upper part fundus, then the body, then the pyloric end, and this pylorus has the pyloric sphincter here. It opens into the small intestine. Small intestine is having the parts like jejunum, ileum and duodenum. So duodenum is the smallest part of the small intestine in which the stomach opens. Then this the duodenum continues into the jejunum, and then this jejunum continues into the ileum part of the small intestine, which is very long. Then the ileum opens into the large intestine, at the place where the small intestine opens into large intestine. There is a blind pouch like structure, we call it vermiform cecum, and this is cecum contains a process called vermiform appendix. Then the large intestine is having again ascending colon, then transverse colon, then descending colon, then sigmoid colon, and then the anus. So these are all the parts of the digestive system or alimentary canal. Then the associated glands are the liver, pancreas, and the glands found in the stomach and intestinal wall. Now the stomach is located into the upper left portion of the abdominal cavity. It has three major parts: a cardiac, this is the cardiac part, into which the esophagus opens; a fundic region, this is the place where the large amount of gas remains collected; and the pyloric portion, which opens into the first part of the small intestine. So this is the pyloric portion. Then small intestine is distinguished into three regions, as I have told in the diagrams. I have explained it. A U-shaped duodenum, which is a very short part, a long coiled middle portion, jejunum, and a highly coiled, very long ileum. Then the opening of stomach into duodenum is guarded by pyloric sphincter. So here there will be the pyloric sphincter. Then ileum opens into large intestine. It consists of cecum, colon, and rectum. Just now I have shown you in the diagram. Cecum is the small blind sac which hosts some symbiotic microorganisms which are helping in digestion of the food. A narrow finger-like tubular projection, the vermiform appendix, which is a vestigial organ, arises from the cecum. Then the cecum opens into the colon. The colon is dividing into three parts: an ascending, a transverse, and a descending part. The descending part opens into cecum, which opens out through the rectum, which opens out through the anus. Then the wall of alimentary canal from esophagus to rectum possesses four layers, namely serosa, muscularis, submucosa, and mucosa. So from outside to inside, these walls are named outer serosa, then below this muscularis, below this submucosa, and the innermost is mucosa. And the detail of these layers of the alimentary canal is not in your syllabus. So only this diagram is there in your syllabus. This diagram I have given in my video also. The simplified diagram I have drawn in my video on the board. You can draw that diagram also. You can draw this diagram also. So we can see outermost layer is the serosa, and below that there will be the muscularis layer. Outer one is the inner one is the circular, and outer one is the longitudinal. Muscularis layer is made of two types of muscles: inner circular muscles and outer longitudinal muscles. Then below that there will be submucosa, and the innermost is the mucosa, and this is the lumen, that is the hollow part. So this generalized diagram is there in your syllabus. It is very important. Then this is the section of this diagram, a part of this diagram shown here. We can see here the villi, this villi which are seen here in the mucosa. This villi we can see here. So this is villi, and this will in the villi there are lacteal yellow color, that is the lymph vessels, then capillaries, then red color is showing the arterial capillaries, and blue color is showing the venous capillaries. So this is how the villi is having network of blood vessels. Now the next topic is digestive glands. So the digestive glands associated with alimentary canal include salivary gland, liver, and pancreas. So saliva is mainly produced by three pairs of salivary glands: the parotid, which are located into cheek; the submaxillary or submandibular, which are located below the lower jaw; and the sublingual, which are located below the tongue. So these glands just situated just outside the buccal cavity secrete salivary juice into the buccal cavity. Then the next gland is the liver. Liver is the largest gland of the body, weighing 1.2 to 1.5 kg in an adult human. It is situated in the abdominal cavity just below the diaphragm and has two lobes. The hepatic lobules are the structural and functional units of liver containing hepatic cells arranged in the form of cords. Each lobule is covered by a thin connective tissue sheath called the Gleason's capsule. The bile secreted, liver cells are secreting the bile juice. This passes through the hepatic duct and is stored and concentrated in a thin muscular sac called gallbladder. The duct of gallbladder is called a cystic duct. Along with the hepatic duct forms the common bile duct. So we can see here, this is the gallbladder, this is common bile duct, and this is duct from liver, and both the ducts, the duct of bile gallbladder called as cystic duct and duct from liver called as hepatic duct, they join to form common bile duct. And then this open into the duodenum part along with the pancreatic duct. And this is called as hepatopancreatic duct. So the bile duct and the pancreatic duct open together into duodenum as the common hepatopancreatic duct, which is guarded by a sphincter called sphincter of Oddi. Then pancreas is compound, means it is both exocrine and endocrine gland. It is situated between the limbs of U-shaped duodenum. Then the exocrine portions of pancreas secretes alkaline pancreatic juices containing enzymes, and the endocrine portion secrete hormones, insulin and glucagon. Now the digestion of food. So the process of digestion is accomplished by mechanical and chemical processes. In the buccal cavity, the two functions are performed, that is mastication of food and facilitation of swallowing. The teeth and tongue with the help of saliva masticate and mix up the food thoroughly. Then mucus is in saliva helps in lubricating and adhering the masticated food into a bolus. So what will be the definition of bolus? The food, masticated food along with saliva, mucus of saliva gets converted into a food solid food particles, and it is called as the bolus. Then the bolus is converted into the pharynx, conveyed into the pharynx, and then into the esophagus by swallowing or deglutition. So deglutition is also definition which is there in your syllabus, and the bolus definition also is there in your syllabus. So for bolus you can write the food, the chewed food which is mixed with saliva and it which is conveyed to the pharynx is called as the bolus. Or you can say the small amount of food which is in the mouth, masticated and mixed with saliva and passes into the pharynx is called as the bolus. And then the process of swallowing the bolus is called as deglutition. Then the bolus further passes down through the esophagus by a successive wave of muscular contractions called peristalsis. So this definition is also there in your syllabus. What is peristalsis? So the successive wave of muscular contraction which passes the food through the alimentary canal. Only esophagus you will not write. Through the alimentary canal is called as the peristalsis, because peristalsis takes place throughout the alimentary canal. Then gastroesophageal sphincter controls the passage of food into the stomach. So from esophagus, when the food is coming into the stomach, the sphincter is there, which is named as gastroesophageal sphincter. Then saliva secreted into oral cavity, it contains all the electrolytes and the enzyme, salivary amylase and lysozyme. Lysozyme kills the germs coming into the food, and salivary amylase converts the partial carbohydrates into partial maltase. So because the some part of the carbohydrate is digested in our mouth, so we can say that the chemical process of digestion is initiated in the oral cavity by hydrolytic action of carbohydrate splitting enzyme, the salivary amylase. So in about 30% of starch is hydrolyzed here by this enzyme into a disaccharide maltose. Then lysozyme present in saliva acts as an antibacterial agent and prevents the infections. Then mucosa of stomach has gastric glands. So these gastric glands which are present in the mucosa lining of the stomach, they are mucous neck cells which secrete mucus, peptic of or chief cells which secrete the proenzyme pepsinogen. So this enzyme pepsinogen in presence of HCl gets converted into pepsin, and this pepsin converts the proteins into proteoses, peptones and proteoses. Then another gastric gland is the parietal or oxyntic cells which secrete HCl and intrinsic factor, and this factor is essential for absorption of vitamin B12. Then the stomach stores the food for 4 to 5 hours. The food mixes thoroughly with the acidic gastric juice of the stomach by churning movement of its muscular wall and is called the chyme. So means after getting mixed up with gastric juices and the acid, the food gets converted into chyme. The proenzyme pepsinogen on exposure to HCl gets converted into active enzyme pepsin, that is the proteolytic enzyme of the stomach. Then pepsin converts proteins into proteoses and peptones. Mucus, a function of mucus and bicarbonates present in gastric juice play an important role in lubrication. Means function of mucus is to lubricate and protect the mucosal epithelium. Means due to the HCl, which is the acidic, the inner lining of stomach may get destroyed. So this mucus keeps the keeps it protected by getting destroyed by the acidic environment in the stomach. And then HCl also provides the acidic optimal for pepsins. Means pepsin is active only in HCl acidic environment. Renin is also a proteolytic enzyme found in gastric juice of infants, which helps in the digestion of milk proteins. Then small amounts of lipases are also secreted by gastric glands. So these enzymes are secreted here. Pepsinogen, then HCl, mucus, and renin in the infant, and small amount of lipases. Then various types of movements are generated by muscularis layer of the small intestine. These we can see, we have seen in the diagram, in the muscularis layer there are longitudinal and circular muscles. So due to these longitudinal and circular muscles, the movement takes place in the alimentary canal. These movements help in a thorough mixing up of the food with various secretions in the intestine and thereby facilitate digestion. Then the function of bile, the bile, pancreatic juice and intestinal juice are secretions released into the small intestine. So pancreatic juice and bile are released through hepatopancreatic duct. We have seen just now in the diagram. The pancreatic juice contains inactive enzymes trypsinogen, chymotrypsinogen, procarboxypeptidases, amylases, lipases, and nucleases. Trypsinogen is activated by an enzyme enterokinase, which is secreted by intestinal mucosa into active trypsin. Means trypsinogen, which is secreted from pancreas. It is secreted, these all are secreted into inactive forms. Trypsinogen, chymotrypsinogen, procarboxypeptidases. When they come into intestine, from the intestinal mucous lining, this enterokinase is secreted. When this enterokinase is secreted, trypsinogen gets converted into trypsin, and then this trypsin activates chymotrypsinogen and procarboxypeptidases. The bile released into duodenum contains bile pigments, bilirubin and biliverdin. These pigments are formed when the hemoglobin gets broken into the liver. So heme part of the hemoglobin gets converted into bilirubin and biliverdin. First of all, it gets converted into biliverdin and bilirubin and then into the biliverdin. So bile salts, cholesterol and phospholipids but no enzymes are secreted by liver into the small intestine as bile juice. So function of bile is bile helps in emulsification of fats. So emulsification of fats is also there in your syllabus definition. So emulsification of fats is what? Breaking down of fats into very small micelles, that is the small particles of the fat, small droplets. So this process of changing of big drops of fat into small droplets is called as emulsification. Bile also activates lipases. Lipases, as we have seen, these are secreted by small pancreas into small intestine. Then the intestinal mucosal epithelium has also glandular cells, that is the goblet cells, which secrete the mucus. The secretion of brush border cells of mucosa along with the secretion of goblet cells constitute the intestinal juice or the succus entericus. So the intestinal juice which is secreted in the intestine by the brush border cells of mucosa along with goblet cells is called as succus entericus. Then this juice contains a variety of enzymes like maltase, dipeptide